The dashboard lights flickered as I turned onto Route 17, the endless stretch of blacktop unspooling under the tires like a ribbon in the dark. It was just past midnight, and the air inside the car felt heavy, the kind of quiet that presses in after a long day. I reached for the radio dial, twisting it absently to chase away the silence. Static hissed for a moment, then cleared into a voice. Clear. Almost too clear, like it was coming from right beside me. And if you're listening tonight, remember, the lines are open. Call in with your stories. What keeps you up when the world's asleep? I froze, my hand hovering over the knob. That wasn't the usual late-night talk show from the city station. No DJ banter, no ads for truck stops or mattress sales. This felt different, intimate, like a whisper meant only for me. The signal wasn't local. I could tell from the faint echo, the way it cut in and out, as if fighting through layers of interference. I glanced at the dial, 89.3 FM, a frequency that should have been dead air out here in the middle of nowhere. Shaking it off, I kept driving. The road curved gently through the pines, their shadows clawing at the edges of my headlights. My name's Alex Harlan, and I've lived in Willow Creek my whole life, a speck of a town in upstate New York, where everyone knows your business, but pretends they don't. I'm a mechanic at the local garage, fixing up Fords and Chevys for folks who've driven the same routes since Eisenhower was president. Routine keeps me grounded. Coffee at the diner before dawn. Home to my place on Elm Street by 7, repeat. Lately, though, the nights have been longer, the quiet louder. My wife, Sarah, passed 2 years back. Cancer, quick and merciless. And since then, the house feels too big, the bed too empty. I take these late drives to clear my head, looping the back roads until the dashboard clock says it's time to crash. Tonight was no different, or so I thought. The voice on the radio droned on. A man with a smooth, measured tone, like a therapist who'd seen too much. Caller, you're on the air. What's on your mind? A pause, then a woman's voice, hesitant and soft. I keep hearing things, in my attic, like footsteps, but no one's there. It's been weeks now. The host chuckled lightly, not mocking, just acknowledging. Folks, that's why we're here. The unexplained, the things that linger in the corners of our lives. Tell us more, caller. I shifted in my seat, the leather creaking under me. Attics. We had one in the old house, full of Sarah's boxes I hadn't touched. Dust and memories, nothing more. But the way the woman described it, the slow pacing, the pauses as if whatever it was were listening, sent a prickle up my neck. I reached to change the station, but my fingers brushed the dial and it stuck, the signal holding steady. Weird. The car was a '98 Civic, reliable as they come. But electronics had been glitchy lately, lights dimming at stops, the radio hunting frequencies on its own. The conversation stretched on, the host probing gently, drawing out details. The woman lived alone in a suburb outside Buffalo, she said, similar enough to my own setup to make it feel close, too close. It started after I moved in, she whispered, like the house was waiting for me. I passed the old Miller farm, its silos stark against the moonlit fields. Willow Creek was the kind of place where farms butted up against cookie-cutter subdivisions, all built in the '70s when the mill was still humming. Now, half the houses sat empty, for sale signs fading in the yards. My place was one of the lucky ones, 2 stories, wrap-around porch, the attic sealed off years ago after a raccoon infestation. Sarah used to joke about ghosts up there, but it was just beams and insulation, nothing to lose sleep over. The radio crackled again, but the signal sharpened. Another caller, this one a man from somewhere in Pennsylvania. It's the shadows, he said, voice gravelly. They move when you're not looking. Follow you home from work. The host's response was calm, almost soothing. And where do you work, friend? Long-haul trucking, lots of empty roads. My grip tightened on the wheel. Empty roads, like this one. I glanced in the rear view, nothing but taillights fading into the dark, no cars for miles. The pines whispered as wind cut through them, and for a second I thought I heard a rustle closer, like footsteps on gravel off the shoulder. Probably a deer. Or my imagination frayed from too many solitary miles. By the time I hit the county line, the show was wrapping up. That's all for tonight. Listeners, tune in tomorrow, same time, same secrets, and remember, if you hear something in the quiet, you're not alone. The signal faded to static, then silence. I twisted the dial off, heart thudding a little harder than it should. Just a pirate broadcast, maybe, bleeding over from some college station up north, nothing to it. But as I turned onto the access road leading back to town, the radio clicked on by itself, low volume, that same frequency humming to life. "Alex, you there? We've been waiting." My foot slammed the brake, tires screeching on the asphalt. The car lurched to a stop, engine idling rough. No way. That name, my name, had to be coincidence. Callers sometimes shared first names. It was a big world, even in the dead of night. But the voice, that host's voice, it lingered, smooth and knowing, like he'd been expecting me all along. I sat there, engine rumbling, staring at the glowing dial. The pines loomed closer now, branches tapping the windows like fingers. Willow Creek's lights twinkled in the distance, a false promise of normalcy. I could drive home, forget it, or I could call in, see if it was real. The quiet stretched, heavier than before, and for the first time in years, the road felt like it was leading somewhere I didn't want to go. I killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying every creak and tick from the cooling metal. The radio went dark with it, that voice. My name hanging in the air like smoke. My hands stayed on the wheel, knuckles white, as if letting go would make the moment real. Coincidence, I told myself, had to be. Names like Alex were common enough in these parts. Hell, there were 3 at the garage alone. But the way it said, "We've been waiting," plural, intimate, curled something cold in my gut. The access road was a narrow cut through the woods, flanked by dense evergreens that swallowed the moonlight. Willow Creek lay maybe 5 minutes away, its sodium lamps a hazy glow on the horizon. I could see the outline of the water tower, that rusted relic from the town's mill days, standing sentinel over the rooftops. Home. Safety. I shifted into drive, easing the car forward, but my eyes kept flicking to the radio, expecting it to flare back to life unbidden. It didn't, not right away. The drive into town was uneventful, the kind of quiet that usually soothed me. Tires humming on cracked pavement, distant hum of a freight train crossing the valley. But tonight, the familiar felt off-kilter, like a song played in the wrong key. I passed the old diner on the edge of town, its neon sign flickering open 24/7. Even at this hour, a few rigs parked out front where truckers nursed coffee and swapped lies about the road. Empty booths visible through the fogged windows, steam rising from plates of eggs and hash. I thought about pulling in, grabbing a slice of pie to steady my nerves, but the idea of sitting under those fluorescent lights, replaying the broadcast in my head, kept me moving. Elm Street was as still as ever when I pulled into the driveway. The house sat there. 2 stories of clapboard siding, painted a faded blue, porch light buzzing faintly against the night. Sarah's flower boxes still hung under the windows, geraniums long dead but the pots untouched. A quiet testament to habits I couldn't break. I grabbed my keys, locked the car and headed inside, the floorboards groaning under my boots like they always did. The living room smelled of stale air and the faint pine cleaner from last week's wipe down. I flicked on the lamp by the couch, its warm glow chasing shadows into the corners, and sank into the cushions, rubbing my temples. Sleep. That's what I needed. But my mind looped back to the radio, that signal punching through the static like it knew my frequency. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the search bar. 89, 3 FM late night show, I typed. But the results were junk. Local weather stations, a Christian broadcast from Syracuse, nothing matching the host's voice or the caller's eerie tales. No pirate radio alerts, no mentions of interference on Route 17. Frustrated, I tossed the phone aside and headed to the kitchen, pouring a glass of water from the tap. The clock on the microwave read 1:17 a.m., too early for dawn, too late for peace. Upstairs, the bedroom was a time capsule. Our king-sized bed with the quilt Sarah picked out in Albany, her side still made up tight, pillows fluffed as if waiting. I stripped down to boxers and slid under the covers, the sheets cool against my skin. The house settled around me, the usual symphony of pops and sighs from the foundation shifting. But tonight there was something else, a faint hum, like an appliance left on in another room. The fridge. No. That was downstairs, and it was silent when I checked earlier. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, willing my eyes to close. It started small, that hum resolving into words, muffled at first, as if seeping through the walls. Echoes of the day, listeners. What do they whisper when you're alone? The voice. That same smooth timbre filtering in from... where? Not the radio. I hadn't brought the car inside. I sat up, heart kicking up a notch, and strained to listen. It was coming from the hallway, faint but unmistakable, like a speaker hidden just out of sight. I swung my legs over the bed's edge, feet hitting the cool hardwood. The house was old, built in the 40s for mill workers, with wiring that could play tricks, pipes groaning like voices, vents carrying sounds from the street. But this was clearer. A broadcast threading through the quiet. And tonight, we talk about the waits, the long pauses before the truth arrives. Padding to the door, I cracked it open. The hallway stretched dim and empty, nightlight by the bathroom casting a soft yellow pool, no radio, no TV flickering. Down the hall, the attic access, a pull-down ladder I'd nailed shut after the raccoons, loomed in the shadows, untouched, or so I thought. The voice grew a touch louder as I stepped out, pulling on a robe against the chill. "Caller, you're breaking up. Try again. Alex, we hear you." My name again. I froze, breath catching. This wasn't spillover from the car. The signal had followed me home, burrowing into the walls like an uninvited guest. I moved to the guest room, flipping the switch, bare bulb buzzing to life, illuminating the spare bed and the dresser cluttered with Sarah's old photos. Nothing there. The voice dipped, then sharpened from the closet, where folded linens sat undisturbed. Waiting in the spaces between, the attic, the basement, the drives that loop forever. Attic, like the caller's story. I backed out, pulse racing now, and checked the bathroom, the linen closet, every door ajar, every corner empty. The house felt alive, breathing the broadcast, the words weaving through the plaster like veins. Downstairs, I paced the living room, the lamp's glow now too harsh, shadows twisting on the walls, the radio in the kitchen, off, dial dark. But there it was again, from the direction of the garage door. "What do you hear in the quiet, Alex? The footsteps? The waiting?" I grabbed my keys, half tempted to fire up the car and drive until the tank ran dry, but the thought of that endless road, the pines closing in, stopped me. Instead, I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. Doubt crept in. Was this grief manifesting, tricks of a tired mind? Sarah's death had left holes, echoes in the empty rooms, but voices? That was new territory, the kind that made you question if the house was holding on to her, or something else. The clock ticked toward 2 a.m., the broadcast fading to a murmur, then silence. Exhaustion pulled at me, but sleep felt like surrender. Outside, a car passed slowly on Elm Street, headlights sweeping the windows, pausing just long enough to make me wonder if someone was listening back. Willow Creek slept on, oblivious, its routines unbroken. But in my house the quiet had shifted, pregnant with possibility. Whatever this signal was, it wasn't done with me. And as the first hints of dawn greyed the sky, I realized the real wait had just begun. The grey light of dawn filtered through the curtains like a reluctant intruder, painting the living room in muted tones. I hadn't slept, not really, just dozed in fits on the couch, the quilt pulled up to my chin, ears straining for any resurgence of that voice. The house was quiet now, the kind of stillness that follows a storm, but it didn't feel settled. It felt watchful. I rubbed the stubble on my jaw, glancing at the clock. 5:42 a.m. Time to face the day. Pretend normalcy hadn't cracked wide open overnight. Coffee first. I shuffled to the kitchen, the linoleum cool under my socks, and fired up the percolator. The gurgle and drip were familiar anchors, steam rising in lazy curls as the aroma filled the air. Outside, Elm Street stirred faintly. A neighbor's dog barking at nothing, the distant rumble of a pickup heading to the mill site. Willow Creek waking up, same as always. I poured a mug, black and strong, and leaned against the counter, staring at the garage door. The car sat in there, innocent under the fluorescent hum, but I couldn't shake the image of the radio dial, glowing like an eye in the dark. Work called. The garage opened at 7, and old man Hargrove would be waiting with his thermos and complaints about the coffee. I dressed quickly. Jeans, flannel shirt, work boots scuffed from years of oil changes, and grabbed my lunch pail. Before heading out, I paused by the attic ladder in the hall. It was still nailed shut, the plywood panel dusty and undisturbed, but the caller's words echoed in my head. Footsteps in the attic, waiting. I pressed my ear to the wood, holding my breath. Nothing, just the faint vibration of the house breathing. Shaking it off, I stepped into the garage, the air thick with the scent of motor oil and rubber. The Civic started on the first turn, engine purring steady. I backed out carefully, avoiding the flower boxes, and eased onto Elm Street. The town unfolded in its morning ritual. Kids waiting for the bus at the corner, their backpacks slung low. Mrs. Ellis watering her hydrangeas, waving absently as I passed. I waved back, forcing a nod, but my mind was elsewhere. The radio stayed off. No temptation to twist the dial, not yet. Route 17 loomed ahead, that same blacktop I'd looped last night, but daylight stripped it of menace. Fields rolling gold under the rising sun, pines standing sentinel without their shadows. The garage was a squat brick building on the edge of town, wedged between the hardware store and a vacant lot where weeds pushed through cracked concrete. I pulled in, parking by the bay doors, and killed the engine. Inside, the clang of tools and low chatter greeted me. Tommy, my apprentice, was already under a hood, grease up to his elbows. "Morning, boss. You look like hell." "Rough night?" I grunted, hanging my jacket on the hook. "Something like that. What's on the docket?" He rattled off the list. Brakes on a Subaru, oil change for the sheriff's cruiser, while I grabbed a rag and dove in. Work was the great leveler, hands busy drowning out the noise in my head. Wrenches turning, engines rumbling to life, the metallic tang of coolant. By noon, sweat beaded on my forehead, and the knot in my chest had loosened a fraction. Lunch break came, and I sat on the milk crate out back, sandwich in hand, watching traffic crawl by on the main drag. A semi rumbled past, hauling lumber from the Canadian border, its trailer swaying like a tired beast. That's when I heard it. Not from the car, from the portable radio on the workbench inside, the one we kept tuned to the classic rock station for background noise. It had been playing Springsteen, low and steady, but now it fizzled into static, then cleared. "Afternoon drive, listeners. The signals cross lines we can't see. Who's tuning in today?" I dropped the sandwich, crumbs scattering on the gravel. That voice again, smooth as polished stone, cutting through the workday hum. Tommy poked his head out the door. "Hey, Alex, you hear that? Radio's acting up. Must be solar flares or something." "Yeah," I muttered, standing too quickly. "Grab it for me." He handed it over, and I fiddled with the antenna, but the signal held, unyielding. No dial to twist here. It was analog, stuck on whatever frequency it pleased. The host continued, oblivious or uncaring. We talked last night about the weights. Today, let's hear from those who drive them, the roads that remember. A caller came on, a woman from somewhere in Ohio. It's the dashboard, she said, voice tentative over the line. Lights up on their own, showing routes I've never taken, like the cars deciding where to go. I gripped the radio tighter, the plastic warm from the sun. Dashboard lights. Mine had flickered last night, right before the signal locked in. Coincidence piling on coincidence, but the weight pressed heavier. Tommy wandered off to the parts shed, leaving me alone with the broadcast. And you, caller? What's pulling you off course? The show rolled on, callers sharing fragments, a man in Michigan hearing his own voice echo back from the speakers, reciting forgotten conversations, another from Vermont claiming the static whispered addresses, leading to empty houses on the outskirts. Each story mirrored my night too closely. The isolation of the drive, the way technology turned traitor, the sense of being heard without speaking. I switched the radio off mid-sentence, the sudden silence ringing louder than the words. The afternoon dragged, every clank and rev now laced with suspicion. When 5 o'clock hit, I wiped my hands and headed out, the portable tucked under my arm like evidence. Back home, Elm Street bathed in the golden hour, families pulling into driveways with grocery bags and kids' laughter spilling out. Normal. But as I parked, the Civic's radio, still off, emitted a faint click like a relay engaging. I didn't turn it on, not yet. Dinner was simple, canned soup heated on the stove, eaten at the kitchen table with the lights blazing. The house felt smaller, walls inching closer, but no voices seeped through tonight, or so I thought. After washing up, I climbed the stairs, the portable radio in hand, and set it on the nightstand. Sleep tugged at me, but curiosity or stupidity won. I flicked it on, volume low, scanning frequencies, static, weather reports, a country station crooning about lost love. Then 89, 3, dead air at first, then the hum. Evening approaches, Alex. The drives end, but the signals don't. What route will you take tonight? My blood ran cold. Not a caller this time, the host, addressing me directly, as if he'd been pausing for my return. I lunged for the knob, but it spun uselessly, the broadcast anchoring in place. We've shared stories of attics and shadows. Yours is coming clearer. The attic waits, doesn't it, with the boxes untouched. Sarah's boxes, up there, sealed away. I stared at the ceiling, the ladder just down the hall. The voice softened, almost conspiratorial. Call in, Alex. Tell us about the waits, the wife who lingers in the quiet. I shut it off, heart hammering, and backed against the headboard. How? A prank. Someone hacking the signal, piecing together my life from public records or small-town gossip. Willow Creek wasn't big. Divorce filings, obits, they spread like wildfire. But this felt deeper, the words probing wounds I kept buried, the attic, the drives, her. Night fell fully, stars pricking the sky visible through the blinds. I lay awake, the portable dark and silent beside me, but the echo persisted in my mind. Outside, another car idled on the street, engine low, then drove off slowly. Surveillance, paranoia. The line blurred, isolation wrapping tighter. Tomorrow, I'd check the car radio properly, take it to the shop, scan for faults, but deep down, I knew it wasn't mechanical. This signal had found me, threading through routines like a vein, waiting for me to follow its frequency. As the clock edged past 10, a soft creak sounded from the hall, the attic ladder, or my imagination. I didn't move, just listened. The quiet now a canvas for whatever came next. The wait stretched, endless as Route 17, and for the first time I wondered if turning back was even possible. The creak lingered in the hallway like a held breath, pulling me from the bed before I could talk myself out of it. The house was pitch black now, the kind of dark that Willow Creek nights delivered without apology. Far from city glow, just the faint tick of the grandfather clock downstairs, marking time I no longer trusted. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand drawer, its beam cutting a narrow path as I eased the door open. The air in the hall felt thicker, cooler, carrying a whisper of dust from years undisturbed. The attic ladder hung there, plywood panel nailed firm, but in the flashlight's sweep, I noticed it. A sliver of shadow where the edge met the wall, as if the nails had loosened just enough to let something peek through. No, that couldn't be right. I'd checked it myself last month, hammer strikes echoing through the empty house. Still, my hand reached out, fingers tracing the wood. Cool, solid. But the creak came again, softer this time from above, like a foot shifting on old beams. I told myself it was the settling. Houses in these parts did that, especially after a humid day, wood expanding and contracting like lungs. But the radio's words clawed at me. The attic waits, with the boxes untouched. Sarah's things up there, photo albums from our trip to the Finger Lakes, her favorite sweaters folded neat, the quilt she stitched by hand during those long winters. I'd meant to sort them, donate what I could, but every time I climbed those stairs in my mind, the weight pinned me down. Easier to seal it off, pretend the past stayed put. The flashlight beam trembled as I gripped the panel, giving it a gentle tug. It held, but a faint give registered under my palm, nails protesting with a tiny groan. Heart thudding steady now, I fetched the toolbox from the garage, quick trip down the stairs, avoiding the living room's accusing silence, and pried the corner loose. One nail popped free, then another, the wood yielding like it had been waiting for permission. Dust sifted down, coating my arms in grey film, and I coughed into my sleeve. The ladder unfolded with a rusty whine, steps unfolding into the beam like an invitation I wasn't sure I wanted to accept. Up I went, slow, each rung creaking under my weight. The attic air hit me first, stale, trapped, laced with the faint vanilla of Sarah's old candles. The space opened up, a low-ceilinged cavern lit only by my flashlight, beams crisscrossing like ribs overhead. Boxes stacked against the far wall, labeled in her careful script, "Holiday ornaments. Alex's tools, don't touch. Memories, handle with care." I swept the light across them, shadows dancing, but nothing moved. No footsteps, no lurking shape, just relics, frozen in time. Kneeling by the nearest stack, I pulled one open, the memories box. Inside, yellowed letters tied with twine, ticket stubs from a Bruce Springsteen concert in '05, a lock of hair from our wedding day. My fingers brushed a small radio, an old transistor model Sarah kept for gardening, its antenna bent from years of use. Dead, of course. The battery compartment rusted shut, but as I set it aside, the hum started, not from the device, but from the walls themselves, vibrating through the insulation like a distant engine. "Finally here, Alex. The signal finds its way home." The voice, clearer now, intimate, as if spoken inches away. I spun the flashlight, beam jerking across the rafters. But the attic was empty, just cobwebs trembling in the draft from the pull-down. Panic edged in, sharp and unfamiliar. I'd faced down-blown engines and busted transmissions without flinching, but this was unraveling from the inside. "Who's there?" I whispered, voice swallowed by the space. No answer, just the host's cadence rolling on, weaving through the air vents. "We've waited through the drives, the days at the garage, the nights alone. But the attic holds the real broadcast, the echoes you can't tune out." Sarah's voice flickered in my memory, her laugh during those summer evenings when we'd sit on the porch, radio playing soft in the background. She'd tune into odd stations sometimes, claiming they carried stories from farther out, places where the pines met the sky. "Listen closer. Alex," she'd say, "there's always more if you let it in." After she was gone, I'd stopped listening altogether, letting silence fill the gaps. But now, the signal mocked that choice, pulling her threads into its web. I dug deeper into the box, hands shaking, unearthing a cassette tape labeled Our Drive, Route 1721. The summer before the diagnosis, we'd taken that road for a weekend getaway. Windows down, her playlist crackling from the car's old tape deck. I had no player up here, but the hum intensified, resolving into fragments. Her voice? No, the host's, mimicking tones from my past. The road remembers the waits, the conversations left hanging. What did she say that last night, Alex, about the signals that follow you home? A sob caught in my throat, raw and unexpected. Not grief exactly, but a deeper fracture. The realization that this wasn't just interference or madness. The signal had mapped me, sifting through the quiet corners of my life, amplifying the doubts I'd buried. The attic wasn't haunted, it was a mirror, reflecting the isolation I'd built plank by plank. Footsteps, they were mine, pacing the edges of loss, waiting for acknowledgement. The flashlight beam caught something in the corner, a loose floorboard, pried up just enough to reveal a small hollow. Inside, nothing but dust and a single nail, bent and old. No device, no speaker. The voice faded then, dissolving into static that echoed my breathing, leaving the attic vast and empty once more. I sat back on my heels, the boxes around me like silent witnesses. The weight of untouched memories pressing down. Descending the ladder felt longer, each step a retreat into the known. I resealed the panel loosely, nails in hand but no hammer strikes, and returned to bed, the house groaning back to stillness. Dawn would come soon, bringing the garage, the diner coffee, the routines that buffered the edges. But as I lay there, eyes tracing cracks in the ceiling, the quiet hummed with possibility. The signal hadn't ended, it had rooted deeper, waiting in the attics of my mind, the drives yet to come. Outside, Elm Street stirred with the first birdsong, Willow Creek pretending nothing had shifted. I closed my eyes, but sleep brought no escape, just the faint echo of a dial turning, promising more stories in the dark. The wait continued, endless and personal, and somewhere in the static I wondered if I'd ever find the off switch.